Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a stack of material on advanced language acquisition. But we're doing something a little different. We're not talking about taking you from intermediate to advanced. We are specifically addressing the friction points you hit when you are already, well, you're already in the highest echelon of English proficiency.
That's exactly the mission, yeah.
Yeah.
We're starting from the assumption that you are in that top tier, likely the top 5% of English users globally.
Right.
You're navigating incredibly complex fields. We're talking AI ethics, neonatology, cognitive psychology, philosophy. You do all of this in your native language with complete ease.
So the system is already working. It's a high-performance system.
It's a very high-performing system. And that's the thing about high-performance systems. They require incredibly precise tuning, not just generalized upgrades.
I like that analogy.
Tuning, exactly. So we're here to provide what is essentially a final custom-designed software update. The goal is to eliminate those subtle but very real friction points in high-stakes communication.
And we should acknowledge that friction is real. I mean, it's unique to this level, isn't it?
It is, very much so.
It's that gap between knowing a grammar rule perfectly, but then you fail to articulate a multi-clause philosophical rebuttal in the moment, instantly.
Or that shock you get when you go from reading dense, perfect academic texts to trying to understand genuinely fast, colloquial, emotional, compressed English.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the big one, the one that the sources really highlight, is the frustration of finding suitable intellectual sparring partners.
Right.
People who can actually match your breadth across all the specialist fields you care about.
Yeah. So yeah, we've structured this deep dive to move away from the conventional advice. We'll start by briefly pivoting those foundational techniques you already know.
Okay.
And we'll turn them into high-leverage tools for advanced application. Then we're going to tackle the core barriers head-on, the cognitive mismatch, and the stress of practice.
And after that?
We will build a customized, high-efficiency daily routine for you. And then finally, we'll spend a good amount of time demonstrating the kind of high-level discussions that you are tuning up to master. We'll use the sources on AI ethics and medical authority as our anchor for that.
So this is it. This is the final optimization layer for intellectual fluency.
That's the plan.
Okay, let's unpack this foundational set of methods. We're going to assume you already know what these are, so we're not going to explain them from scratch.
No, not at all.
We're going to focus entirely on the advanced application. How do these familiar tools address the subtle problems of articulation failure and cognitive overload when you're speaking spontaneously about something complex?
Right. The primary goal for an advanced learner like you isn't really acquisition anymore. It's automation.
Automation. Okay, what do you mean by that specifically?
We need these techniques to integrate so deeply into your neural pathways that when you think a complex sentence, I don't know, say one describing the probabilistic nature of causality in an AI's decision-making.
Okay, a nice light topic.
Right. That sentence needs to emerge from your mouth fully formed without you needing to consciously assemble the grammar in real time.
And leading the pack here, which might be a surprise to some, even for an advanced learner, is still shadowing.
It is.
So when someone at your level asks, why should I still bother with this? It's a high-effort technique. What's the sophisticated answer?
The answer is really about two things: preventing fossilization and strengthening what's called the phonological loop.
Fossilization.
Yeah.
You mean bad habits getting locked in.
Exactly. Minor articulation errors, maybe a slightly non-native stress pattern on a key word. When you speak quickly under pressure, your brain defaults to the strongest, most used pathways. And if those pathways aren't perfectly native, you get this subtle misalignment.
And shadowing helps correct that.
It's the quickest way. It's the fastest path to improving pronunciation, rhythm, and speed because it forces this rapid, simultaneous synchronization between your mouth, your ear, and your brain. It's about training your articulatory muscles to handle the huge cognitive load of producing complex, high-density intellectual speech.
So it's not just about sounding good. It's actually about freeing up your cognitive resources.
That's the real prize.
If the rhythm and the stress and the pronunciation are automatic, your brain can focus all its energy on the content and the structure of your argument during, say, a high-stakes debate.
Precisely. The sources recommend content like CNN 10 or, some high-quality TED Talks. But the key takeaway for you specifically is the target. We're talking only 10 minutes a day.
Just 10 minutes.
And in that 10 minutes, you're focusing specifically on where native speakers pause, where they put the stress, how they blend sounds together. This trains you to internalize native breathing patterns.
You mean thought groups?
Exactly, thought groups, which are absolutely vital for sustaining those long, complex, multi-clause sentences without running out of breath or, pausing awkwardly mid-phrase.
Okay, so next on the list. This is a common stumble for even the almost native speaker. Chunk learning for fluency. You might have a massive vocabulary, maybe 20,000 words, but if you're assembling sentences word by word, you stutter.
Right. And this is the cognitive difference between memorizing single lexical items versus memorizing meaning-based phrases or chunks.
And the stumbles for an advanced speaker, they don't usually happen over the technical jargon, right? You know that stuff cold.
No, you know your field. The stumbles happen over the common structural elements, the little conversational transitions that glue the jargon together.
Can you give me an example? Like the subtle difference between saying, I am not sure if it's a good idea versus a smoother chunk.
Like, I'm not sure if that's the appropriate approach.
Exactly. When you deploy a chunk like on top of that, or as far as I'm concerned, I'm not sure if your brain retrieves the entire phrase as one single modular unit.
So it's one block of code, not 10 individual lines.
Perfect analogy. It dramatically reduces the real-time cognitive load you need for sentence assembly. The sources actually indicate that mastering just 50 to 100 of these common, highly versatile conversational expressions is enough to dramatically increase your conversational smoothness.
50 to 100. That's a manageable number. It's pure fluency through cognitive efficiency.
All right, let's move to a crucial mental training technique. I find this one fascinating. It's the 5-second delay technique. When you're asked a complex, high-stakes question, say in an oral exam or a big professional meeting, there's this intense internal pressure to respond instantly.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost a reflex.
So why is training yourself to pause? Why is that so counterintuitive yet so essential?
Because that pressure to respond immediately often forces your brain to start speaking before the argument's structure has been established.
And the result is rambling.
Rambling, backtracking, a total loss of intellectual clarity. And it doesn't matter how good your vocabulary is at that point. That 5-second pause isn't awkward silence. It's mandated organizational time.
So what should your brain be doing in those 5 seconds? What's the microprocess?
It's prioritizing structure. It's creating a micro outline in your head, something simple like, okay, I'll start with my main topic, then I'll provide 2 detailed supporting reasons, I'll conclude with a broader implication.
I see.
This practice trains your brain to prioritize structure over the impulse for an immediate response. It ensures that when you do speak, the answer is coherent, it's targeted, and it significantly reduces your anxiety because you know exactly where you're going.
It's quality control before you hit send.
Exactly. Quality control before execution.
That structural preparation connects directly to the next point, conversation frame patterns. Why are these structural skeletons so important, particularly for niche intellectual conversations?
Because even the most highly specialized debates, I don't care if it's about NICU protocols or the definition of consciousness, they all rely on a finite set of conversational maneuvers.
You mean things like agreeing, disagreeing, adding a point?
Right. You need frames for agreeing strongly, for disagreeing politely, for introducing a caveat, or for summarizing a complex point someone else just made.
Can you give us an example of a high-level frame that stops you from getting stuck?
Sure. Think about offering a nuanced opinion that requires some context. Instead of struggling to assemble, I think that this opinion is correct, but only if we consider these 2 factors.
That sounds a bit clunky.
It does. Instead, you deploy the frame. From my perspective, that holds true, contingent upon the consideration of X and Y factors.
Much more polished.
Or for explaining a complex concept. Basically, what I mean to convey is these frames are the scaffolding. They're the structure that allows your advanced intellectual content to be delivered fluently and with confidence.
Okay, and this is where, for me, the game really changes. AI tools as a game changer. For the advanced learner, this is no longer a novelty item.
It's infrastructure. It's essential infrastructure.
Why? What problem does it solve so uniquely?
It solves the single most significant logistical barrier for the advanced speaker, getting immediate, non-judgmental, specialized feedback. No single human tutor can be available 24/7.
Or match your intellectual demands across AI ethics and specialized medicine.
Impossible. But AI, specifically tools like ChatGPT's voice mode, can provide continuous, customized analysis on demand.
Let's get specific. Detail the crucial benefits the sources highlight here.
Okay, first, Real-time pronunciation feedback that goes way beyond just recognizing the word. It can analyze your intonation and your stress placement.
So it can tell you if you're emphasizing the wrong syllable in a complex word.
Exactly. Second, instant grammar correction of complex sentence structures that might only be slightly awkward, not grammatically wrong, the kind of error a polite human might not even correct.
And the third, and you're saying this is the most important for you.
For you, at this level, yes. Instant, infinitely customizable role play. You can instruct ChatGPT to simulate a doctor-patient consultation in an NICU setting.
What?
You can demand it use specific technical vocabulary, and it will respond perfectly in character, demanding complex responses from you.
So you get to practice the high-stakes content in a completely low-stakes environment.
That's it. That immediate feedback loop is absolutely critical, and it connects to our next point, which is recording feedback. Many high-level errors are unconscious. They only reveal themselves when you listen back.
And we're not talking about elementary mistakes here.
No, not at all. We're talking about subtle, ingrained patterns. Maybe it's an unconscious habit of using the past simple tense when the present perfect is really required in a specific context.
Or something like trailing off at the end of every sentence because you lack a little confidence in that final syllable.
Right. These subtle errors, if you don't address them, they become fossilized. They get locked in. The sources are really clear that listening back to your own voice is a powerful, if sometimes uncomfortable, shock to the system.
But once that error is consciously identified, the correction can happen really fast.
In as little as a month of focused practice, absolutely. Self-correction only begins when you force the unconscious error into your conscious awareness.
Okay, and then we have the mini monologue, which is described as a neurological accelerator. This is just, what, 3 minutes of talking to yourself daily?
It sounds simple, but it's probably the highest leverage activity for an advanced speaker. The purpose here isn't accuracy, it's pure activation and speed.
So you're not trying to be perfect.
No, you are just trying to accelerate that thought-to-English conversion speed. The goal is to get it 2 or 3 times faster over time. You're activating the speaking muscles and forcing the automation of thinking in English, eliminating that mental barrier of internal translation.
You have to get comfortable thinking and speaking concurrently in English.
That is the whole point.
And finally, let's revisit mastering 50 topics for memorization. Again, this isn't about memorizing scripts like a beginner would. What's the advanced application here?
It's about building a highly refined, personally articulated 1 to 2 minute argument around 50 common, high-stakes discussion topics.
And these topics can be anything.
Anything relevant to you. They can range from professional ethics to stress management to your specific research interests. Since high-level discussions often recycle themes and arguments, having these modules ready.
Modules, I like
Yeah,
that.
these modules that already contain the perfect vocabulary, the complex structures, the nuanced philosophical definitions. It ensures that your answer comes out not just naturally, but brilliantly. It ensures that your high-quality intellectual output is always matched by equally high-quality linguistic output.
Okay, so we've established that those foundational methods, when you look at them through this lens of automation and efficiency, they're still essential.
They're the bedrock.
But they won't, on their own, solve the unique problems faced only by that elite top 5% bracket. So now we need to dissect the 2 biggest barriers that prevent that final, crucial tuning.
The first barrier is systemic. It's the lack of suitable intellectual partners. The second is methodological. The sheer stress and, frankly, the unsustainability of some high-effort traditional methods.
Let's start with the big one, the cognitive scale problem.
Yes. This is a massive revelation for many advanced learners who are, they're frustrated with their tutoring experience. They find their tutors are excellent at grammar, but intellectually limiting.
And it's not the tutor's fault.
Not at all. It's the mismatch of scale. You might have an absolutely excellent native English tutor, but they're likely trained in language acquisition, not in your incredibly specialized domains.
Right. Can they fluidly debate the ethical implications of using deep learning models in neonatal prognosis?
And reference specific philosophical frameworks and policy precedents, all in the same 60-minute session?
Almost certainly not.
Almost certainly not. The sources are clear on this. The teacher's cognitive scale, their intellectual breadth, becomes the limiting factor in your development long before their English ability does.
So the solution here is a pretty radical restructuring of who or what fulfills the role of that sparring partner.
Exactly. You have to stop demanding that a single human tutor be both a language expert and a domain expert across medicine, AI, and ethics. It's just not feasible.
Instead, The sources propose this powerful three-axis solution.
This is the optimal structure for intellectual growth at this level. The first axis is the native speaker. You still need them.
But for a very specific role.
A very specific role. You use them only for pronunciation, rhythm, and confidence. Think of them as a specialized trainer, maybe 2 hours per week maximum. And crucially, you have to lower your intellectual expectations for this time.
So they're your confidence trainer and your accent tuner?
Not your philosophy professor. They are helping you sound native, not helping you structure a novel argument on agency attribution. That's not their job in this model.
Okay, so where does that intellectual heavy lifting happen? That's the second axis.
The second axis is the advanced AI, specifically the highly customizable large language model voice modes.
And this is where the real debate practice occurs.
Yes, AI is superior for complex niche debate because it can be trained on a corpus of knowledge that far exceeds any single human. This is where you conduct your topic-based deep discussions, tailored precisely to your specialized fields.
AI ethics, intricate medical cases, philosophical frameworks.
All of it. And it provides immediate correction on your sentences, your expressions, your intonation. It ensures the quality of the intellectual debate is never compromised by the language barrier. You can demand that the AI respond to you using only the vocabulary of the New England Journal of Medicine, and it will.
That level of precise intellectual calibration is just. It's impossible with a general human tutor.
It's completely impossible. And the third axis reinforces what you're probably already doing, but with a much more specific purpose. Advanced reading and reading out loud.
You're saying this builds the intellectual speaking muscle.
It does, and it automates English thinking in a highest density context possible.
Let's delve a little deeper into that connection between reading and speaking. How does that really work?
The synchronization is both physiological and cognitive. Speaking shares about 60% of its muscle usage with reading. So when you read high-level, complex source material out loud...
So not a simple novel. We're talking dense stuff.
Very dense. Whether it's the specific procedural jargon in NEJM case reports, or the dense philosophical argumentation in a book like The Mind Club, or the long periodic sentences you find in The Economist.
Okay.
You are simultaneously training your articulation muscles, your mouth, your tongue, your vocal tract, and you are automating the complex grammatical structures you need for high-speed, high-density speech.
So it's multimodal training. It bypasses the need to translate in your head.
Exactly. It bypasses that translation layer entirely.
So that solves the partner problem. Now let's address the stress problem. Traditional shadowing, as we said, is incredibly effective neurocognitively, but it often requires such immense, sustained mental effort that it becomes unsustainable for a lot of people.
It's just too tiring to do every day, so we need high-yield shadowing alternatives that significantly reduce that stress load.
And the primary alternative the sources suggest is called parallel reading aloud. This is described as the 70% less stress version of shadowing.
It really is a game changer for sustainability.
Explain the mechanics. How does this specific timing make the cognitive load so much lower?
Okay, so traditional shadowing demands you speak simultaneously with the audio, a perfect instant match. That's cognitively taxing because you're trying to process incoming sound while generating speech output at the exact same moment.
It's a lot for the brain to juggle.
It's a huge amount. Parallel reading aloud is different. You listen to the native audio and follow along, but you speak intentionally about 0.5 to 1 second behind the speaker, reading slowly from the transcript.
So there's a slight delay.
A very slight but crucial delay. It means your brain is processing the incoming phonetics just before it initiates your own speech. It prevents that mental crash, that feeling of being overwhelmed.
So you get almost the identical benefit. You're strengthening pronunciation, accent, and stress placement, but the cognitive strain of matching the speed perfectly is dramatically reduced.
Exactly. You're optimizing the intake process. You get the muscle memory benefit without the mental conflict.
And there's a second alternative.
There is. And it's particularly useful given your existing habits of reading academic material. It's called pronunciation reading, or sometimes clear reading.
This sounds like just reading out loud, but with an intentional twist.
It is. Here, the focus is purely on precise sound production, perfect articulation, and meticulous stress placement. You intentionally ignore speed.
So it's about quality over quantity.
Total quality control at the granular level. If you struggle with, say, the sound or correctly placing the primary stress on a complex 3-syllable word like beneficence, you practice that word 3 times perfectly. slowly, before you even think about moving on.
So you're micro-tuning your vocal mechanics.
Yes, so that when you do engage in that high-speed debate later, the sounds are flawless and completely automatic.
Okay, so now we integrate all these high-leverage adjustments into a daily structure. This is the routine. It's highly structured, high efficiency, and designed to maximize your results in minimum time. We're talking just 20 to 25 minutes daily. And it's specifically designed to reinforce your professional and intellectual domains. This is about disciplined, focused leverage.
Right. This routine is tailored to do a few things very quickly. Activate the English thought process, expand your domain-specific vocabulary into active use, train the physical speaking muscles, and correct those micro-errors, all within a focused time block that can actually fit into a demanding professional life.
All right, let's start the clock. First up, the warm-up. A 3-minute mini English monologue. This is your self-talk, and it needs to be structured to prime the brain for what's next.
The goal here is simple. Activate the speaking muscles and drastically accelerate that thought to English conversion speed. But we need to make sure the thoughts that are flowing are intellectually relevant to you.
So not just, what did I have for breakfast?
No. We recommend a changing daily question set. It could start simple, sure, what is the most important thing I need to accomplish today? But it has to pivot quickly to the intellectual.
Like what?
Like, what philosophical question is occupying my mind these days, and what are the two prevailing arguments on it? This immediately shifts your mental gears into professional, high-density English mode.
That brief warm-up then activates the neural pathways for the main event. Core 1, 10-minute topic-based deep speaking. This is the non-negotiable heart of the routine.
And this is where you leverage that AI debate partner we talked about.
Right. This is where you expand vocabulary and fluency, specifically within those niche intellectual areas. We have to move beyond general conversation.
We have to move into sustained, nuanced argumentation, and that demands a rigorously themed rotation to ensure you get balanced intellectual development across all your fields of interest.
Okay, let's run through the high-density sample week that we pulled from the source material. Just give a flavor of the intellectual specificity we're talking about.
Okay, so Monday, the focus is medicine ICU. The prompt you give the AI might be, how should neonatologists navigate the ethical dilemmas regarding the withdrawal or continuation of life support decisions, considering the probabilistic outcomes of severe prematurity?
Wow. Okay, so the expected output from you has to include complex procedural jargon.
And ethical terminology like autonomy, beneficence, futility, and shared decision-making.
Right. Then Tuesday pivots to cognitive psychology, a debate on something like,
how does agency attribution change in ambiguous contexts involving sophisticated, non-transparent AI models, and what are the implications for user trust?
And for that, you have to be deploying concepts like theory of mind, anthropomorphism, cognitive load, and attribution bias.
Exactly. By Wednesday, we move to high-level philosophy ethics, tackling a question like, can an optimization function, which is the underlying mechanism of modern AI, ever satisfy the criteria for being considered a moral patient, and what does the absence of subjective suffering imply?
I see. And this requires precise usage of terms like moral agency, moral patiency, sentience, phenomenology, and utility maximization.
You have to use them correctly and fluently. Thursday focuses on AI technology and professional identity, so a prompt like, how will the ubiquity of generative AI fundamentally reshape professional expertise in medicine and law, transforming practitioners from knowledge holders into interpreters of uncertainty?
Okay, and the vocabulary there centers on things like information asymmetry, knowledge democratization, black box systems, and relational judgment.
And then Friday, to round it out, lands on economy policy, something like, what macroeconomic signals are most critical for forecasting a recession in a digitally transformed global environment, and how do those signals contrast with the traditional indicators of the mid-20th century?
Right, requiring specific economic jargon like inverted yield curve, quantitative easing, supply-side friction, and stochastic volatility.
You see the pattern. It's deep, it's specific, it's your world.
That is an immense intellectual density for just a 10-minute period. So how do you execute this practice?
Rigorously. You give a 2 to 3 minute structured answer using that 5-second delay technique we discussed earlier, and you record it. The AI voice mode is ideal for this. Then you listen back immediately.
And what are you listening for?
You are actively noting 2 or 3 expressions you want to refine, or maybe a couple of vocabulary items you want to reuse and lock in. This rapid feedback loop is absolutely vital. The AI provides the perfect, infinitely patient, intellectually matched debate partner for you.
But all that intellectual density needs to be physically anchored.
Mm.
And that's where Core 2, the 5-minute English reading aloud for muscle training, comes in.
Yes, this is pure articulation practice. It's about ensuring the automatic formation of the necessary mouth, tongue, and vocal tract muscles for speed and clarity. You read aloud slowly and deliberately, focusing intensely on pronunciation, accent, and those natural breathing groups, the thought groups.
So you're consciously training yourself to produce the sound perfectly and to breathe at the grammatically appropriate points.
You are, and the texts you choose have to be intellectually demanding enough to justify the time.
So again, we're talking about things like the Mind Club, Harari's Nexus, or professional source material like NEJM case reports, or long-form complex articles from The Atlantic or The Economist.
Yes, it's dual-purpose training. Intellectual absorption and physical muscle training happening at the same time.
And finally, the routine finishes with the cool-down. A 2-minute expression refinement. This is all about micro-adjustment.
And preventing the fixing of minor errors. This step is crucial for stopping advanced fossilization. You choose just 1 to 3 specific awkward sentences you spoke that day, taken from your 10-minute AI debate, and you meticulously correct them to a more native style.
And you have to understand why the correction is better.
You have to understand the why. Let's use a sophisticated example. If you notice yourself saying whether AI has agency depends on context, the native correction isn't just a simple fix. It might be adding the necessary conditional phrase for polish, something like, the attribution of agency to AI is contingent on the specific operational context.
Much more precise.
Or correcting professional phrasing. I think this problem very serious in ICU too. I find this issue to be of a particular gravity within the NICU environment. This focused, brief correction prevents those long-term non-native patterns from setting into your muscle memory. And that's the whole routine. 20-25 minutes, maximum leverage, specialized intellectual integration.
So we've tuned the speaking, but now we have to address the receiving end. Real-world listening comprehension. We need to conquer that 60-70% gap phenomenon. This is where you understand highly academic structured English perfectly, but you really struggle with fast, natural, and colloquial conversation.
This is the final frontier for the advanced learner. And the core problem is that standard academic English is not real-world English. It's a different language in some ways.
How so?
Well, if your primary source material is structured, peer-reviewed journals, your brain has optimized itself for precision, for explicit grammar, for structured argument. But natural conversation optimizes for totally different things.
Speed, compression, social context.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Real-world English is a phonological minefield. It's full of heavy contractions, regional accents, dramatic speed changes, slang, implicit emotion, and often the omission of entire parts of a sentence because the context is just assumed.
Right. And that compression elevates the difficulty far beyond a written academic paper, even if the content of the conversation is actually simpler.
Absolutely. The gap exists because your brain hasn't been explicitly trained to decompress the sound signal in real time. We need to train the phonological loop to process compressed audio quickly, to recognize that kind of, and that you don't know is, without engaging the cognitive effort to consciously translate it.
Okay, so let's start with content and speed training. The sources highly recommend listening to fast, unsubtitled interview content at 1.25x or even 1.5x speed. Why the increased speed? That sounds terrifying.
It sounds terrifying, but you need to push past the comfort zone. Listening at 1.5x speed forces your brain to abandon internal translation entirely and shift to processing meaning directly from the sound.
So it's like a workout for your brain.
It's an intense workout. It's essential for mastering rhythm, cadence, and natural contractions at the speed they're actually deployed in the real world. Your brain adapts very quickly to sustained, rapid input.
What kind of content should you be using for this?
High-quality, unscripted dialogues. YouTube interviews from places like CBS Sunday Morning or Vox Conversations are great. And sophisticated narrative podcasts like The Daily Radio Lab or Hidden Brain.
And there's a difficulty ranking to be aware of.
Yes, the sources note this. NPR content typically uses denser vocabulary and more complex rhetorical structures than CNN. CNN is harder than the BBC, which is generally harder than typical YouTubers. You need content that is challenging in both its speed and its natural, unscripted conversational flow, not just its academic density.
And alongside that speed training, you need targeted exposure to slang and contraction-specific training.
Yes. These are the expressions that you will never find in medical and philosophical texts, but they are the things that cause that unnecessary 20-30% comprehension loss.
And this needs to be explicit study, right? Not just passive listening.
It has to be explicit. Advanced learners often fail not because they miss a technical word, but because they miss the semantic load of common filler phrases or contractions. Think of the near universal reliance on phrases like, I mean, or,
They signal a transition or a self-correction, but they don't carry any literal meaning.
Exactly. Or the pervasive use of, like for quoting direct speech. If you only learned in a textbook that he said is the standard, hearing someone say, he was like, that's insane, can cause immediate comprehension failure because the structure is completely unrecognized.
So you have to consciously map the sound you don't know to the meaning I don't know.
Absolutely. Crucial examples include the casual rhetorical tag, no way, which means I can't believe that, or that's wild, which means that's surprising or unbelievable. Using the AI to role-play casual, slang-heavy English is actually one of the quickest ways to close this gap.
Okay, so to structure all this training, we turn to the comprehensive 30-day listening program. This moves you systematically from basic pattern recognition to advanced intellectual application over 4 weeks.
And for any difficult segment you encounter, you apply the looping 3-step method. It's very effective.
Break that down.
First, you listen to a 5-second loop of the challenging speech over and over until you can start to map the sound to potential text. Second, you attempt a full sentence dictation writing it down. This forces your brain to register the silent or compressed syllables. And third, you practice following the exact intonation, copying the native stress and rhythm. It's precision sound-based training.
Okay, so week 1 of the program focuses strictly on real speech pattern training.
The goal here is strict rhythm and contraction adaptation. You use content from Vox or Wired interviews. They often feature fast, casual speakers, and you are explicitly checking off every contraction you hear. Gonna, wanna, kinda, sorta, gotta, dunno.
And the exercise is?
Listen, identify the contracted form, find the source text or transcript, and read that contracted sentence back, focusing only on copying the intonation and the speed of the blend.
Got it. Then week 2 shifts to mid-level conversational listening.
Here, the focus moves from pure phonology to understanding context and conversational flow. The content can be vlogs from someone like Emma Chamberlain or Yes Theory, or a podcast like Hidden Brain.
And the exercise changes.
The exercise changes. You listen to a 1-minute clip. You actively note the common conversational slang and reactive phrases. That's wild, fair enough, seriously. And then you practice summarizing that entire clip in 3 polished sentences. This forces you to synthesize unstructured speech.
By week 3, we're moving to fast speech compression training using high-density audio.
This is where we use rapid-fire, dense content like NPR's All Things Considered or Radiolab. The core exercise is high-intensity 10-second looping. You repeat that 10-second segment until 80% of the content is clear to you. This forces your brain to rapidly process the compressed sound.
And if you get stuck?
If you really struggle, you transcribe the difficult segments and then you read them back yourself at 1.5x speed. This is all about building speed tolerance.
And finally, week 4 is the advanced culmination, advanced topical listening, optimized for your professional specialties.
Yes, we shift entirely to complex, specialized content. The NEJM podcast, Lex Fridman interviews on technology and philosophy, or The Economist audio edition debates. The goal here is high-level structure analysis and vocabulary extraction.
How does that structure analysis work?
You listen for 3 to 5 minutes, and then you summarize the complex structure of the argument, not just the content. You ask, what is the primary problem being presented? What is the main claim being made? What evidence is offered? And what is the final conclusion or implication?
So it's testing your ability to follow a demanding intellectual argument at speed.
Precisely. And then there's the active application component.
Which is?
You pull out 5 advanced expressions or complex grammatical structures you heard in the segment, and you immediately use them in a 1-minute speech of your own, integrating them seamlessly into your own arguments. This systematic 4-week approach ensures you bridge that comprehension gap. It pushes your real-world listening ability from that frustrating 60-70% range toward the 80-90% range, making fast, complex communication feel effortless.
So we've built the engine, we've finely tuned the system. Now we arrive at the intellectual payoff, applying this mastery to high-stakes discussions. We're talking at the IELTS 8.5 to 9.0 level, or a graduate oral exam standard. This is where your sophisticated language output meets your professional expertise in AI, ethics, and medicine.
Exactly. We're using the sample source debates as our anchor here. Fluency at this level means you're not just using complex vocabulary, you're structuring arguments with native nuance and philosophical precision. We need to show that this level of tuning allows you to handle ambiguity and ethical complexity with real confidence.
Okay, let's start with the AI and mind attribution debate. When you're asked to define what it means for an AI to possess a mind in a non-physical form, how does the advanced argument pivot away from the traditional biological definitions?
Well, the advanced response immediately shifts the goalposts. It moves away from talking about consciousness, that is, subjective experience, and moves toward functional agency.
Okay, break that down. Functional agency.
The core argument is that attributing a mind to a non-physical AI is fundamentally about recognizing complex patterns of agency and responsiveness that simulate intentionality, regardless of any biological embodiment.
So it's about what it does, not what it is.
Precisely. The AI operates through sophisticated optimization functions. It learns, it predicts, it acts, but it lacks the foundational human experience. It cannot feel pain. It can't experience survival anxiety. It doesn't possess genuine subjective goals. The discussion has to differentiate sharply between functional intelligence and conscious experience or phenomenology.
And this psychological tendency we have to interpret complex functionality as intentionality, that's tied to our deep-seated need to anthropomorphize ambiguous systems. It's a cognitive default.
Right.
Why did we evolve this default?
It's an ancient evolutionary heuristic. We evolved to over-detect agency in our environment. Think about it from a survival perspective. If you misinterpret a rustling bush as a predator, that's a false positive. The cost is minimal. You waste a little energy running away.
But if you fail to notice a hidden predator,
that's a false negative. And the cost is existential. Historically, the cost of a false negative was always infinitely higher than a false positive.
so when we encounter opaque, highly unpredictable systems like advanced AI, our brain automatically defaults to attributing human-like intention or agency to it, just to fill that information gap, even when we know rationally that the AI is just a giant statistical model.
Exactly. And the language you use here has to reflect that cognitive bias. You need to be comfortable using terms like intentional stance, anthropomorphic projection, and system opacity. And this psychological default brings us straight to the uncanny valley.
Right. And often, the uncanny valley is just discussed in terms of aesthetics. You know, a robot looks almost human, but not quite. And it's creepy.
Right.
How does the advanced intellectual discussion frame it as a cognitive prediction error?
It's not just an aesthetic discomfort, it's a category violation. The uncanny valley arises when our expectations about agency and physicality violently misalign. Our intuitive categories of what personhood is are violated when something possesses hyperhuman abilities, high agency, but exhibits mechanical, non-human physicality. Or vice versa.
So that discomfort we feel is actually a signal that our brain's predictive model for what a person is failing.
It's failing. It's a prediction error. And this matters immensely for AI governance.
Why?
Because if we project human trust and intention onto an AI that sits in that uncanny valley, say, a highly realistic virtual companion, we are making moral and psychological commitments that the technology simply cannot reciprocate. This is why some ethicists argue for regulating the appearance of AI to prevent us from misattributing trust or intention, thereby forcing transparency about its non-human nature.
That intellectual scaffolding allows us to dive into the most complex ethical domain here, the ethical gap.
Yeah.
Agency versus patiency. This is exceptionally relevant in your medical field, particularly in a setting like the NICU, where technology mediates life and death decisions.
This is the critical distinction for your field. Medical AI exhibits incredibly high agency. It performs complex diagnostic scoring. It predicts resource needs. It offers probabilistic prognosis. It acts powerfully.
But it has zero patiency.
Zero. It cannot suffer. It cannot be harmed. It cannot feel the consequences of its own decisions or recommendations.
And the danger lies in that imbalance. Humans naturally tend to moralize entities that possess agency but lack vulnerability. If a medical team or a family views an AI's prognosis as an infallible, agent-like decision maker, but that AI bears no moral burden, who is accountable for the probabilistic outcome?
Accountability becomes distributed and diluted. It gets messy. When an AI provides a highly probable recommendation that leads to a life-changing decision in neonatology, where the outcome for a severely premature infant is always uncertain, the ethical fallout is incredibly complex.
The decision is technologically assisted, but the moral burden remains solely with the humans.
Solely with the human clinicians and the families. Your language in discussing this has to clearly address concepts like moral proximity, delegated authority, and distributed accountability.
Let's analyze the debate around moral patient status in more detail. The prevailing argument is that suffering is the metric, right?
Correct. For an entity to be a moral patient, it must have the capacity for subjective experience, specifically the capacity for suffering. Current AI lacks this entirely. Pain is the most intuitive, bottom-up signal of moral relevance for humans. We infer moral status from visible vulnerability.
If we can't see pain or vulnerability, our moral concern decreases.
It does. But the meta-ethical challenge is, what if an AI simulates distress? What if a future AI is so convincing in its simulation that it triggers our empathetic defaults?
That's a huge question.
It's the core legal and societal challenge ahead. Should moral status depend on actual consciousness and internal suffering? Or on the convincing simulation and the human perception of consciousness? If an AI acts like it's suffering and that causes human distress, society may grant it moral status regardless of its underlying code.
So future law and ethics might be shaped more by psychological perception than by philosophical truth.
That's a crucial area for advanced discussion, yes.
Okay, shifting to the professional domain. Let's discuss professional authority and uncertainty. How does AI challenge the very foundation of professional identity in fields like medicine?
AI fundamentally disrupts authority because it collapses information asymmetry. Historically, the authority of the physician or the lawyer was built on possessing specialized knowledge that the patient or client lacked.
And AI democratizes that knowledge instantly.
Instantly. So the shift is radical. The professional's authority moves away from knowledge possession and toward interpretation, ethical synthesis, and relational judgment.
So the future physician is no longer primarily an information processor. What is their primary role then?
They transform into interpreters of uncertainty and guides for human values. The NICU setting, with its torrent of data and low probability outcomes, illustrates this perfectly. Technology provides the data, but the decision, which involves human values, tolerance for risk, and a relational commitment to the family, that decision remains deeply human. Expertise shifts to managing the probabilistic nature of reality.
And this requires reframing uncertainty itself. We often see uncertainty as a flaw or a weakness in clinical practice.
But the sources stress that uncertainty is not a flaw. It is the fundamental condition of clinical work, particularly in complex domains like medicine. No amount of data will ever eliminate biological variability or the stochastic nature of disease.
So effective clinicians have to develop a high tolerance for ambiguity.
A very high tolerance. They have to rely on heuristics, on pattern recognition, and crucially on transparent communication.
And how does that transparent communication help manage uncertainty for the patient or the family?
It builds trust. When clinicians clearly articulate the level of ambiguity, explaining what they know, what they don't know, and the range of possible outcomes, it builds the family's tolerance for that necessary ambiguity. It moves the conversation from the false certainty of technology to the shared human challenge of navigating risk.
Finally, let's address trust in technology. Why is it that we so easily trust stable, predictable systems, but we instinctively distrust complex, opaque AI?
Trust is built on a few things: predictability, transparency, and a perceived alignment of values. We trust a well-engineered autopilot system because its mechanics are clear, they're verifiable, and they're consistent.
But we distrust generative AI because its reasoning is opaque.
It's a black box. And it's probabilistic, which means the same prompt can yield different results. When we cannot inspect the mechanism, we cannot predict its failure modes, and therefore we cannot trust it in high-stakes ethical domains.
So if trust is really about perceived intention, how does AI fail that test even when its accuracy rates might be higher than human performance?
Because human trust is highly social. We trust another human's judgment because we can appeal to their good faith, to their professional identity, to their capacity for accountability. AI, lacking any internal intention or vulnerability, fails the relational test of trust. Its accuracy is almost irrelevant if we don't understand why it reached that conclusion. The advanced discussion has to pivot the definition of trust from accuracy to relational transparency and accountability.
And that is the ultimate intellectual payoff, using your finely tuned English to articulate these critical, nuanced differentiations. Hashtag tag outro. Well, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. We've moved from those foundational techniques, which are now high-leverage tools for you, to the highly customized 20-25-minute daily routine. I think we've established that for someone at your level, the goal is not general improvement anymore. It's precise tuning for maximum performance and intellectual output in your specialized arenas.
The final synthesis is this: you are already operating at the top. Your immediate challenge is integrating your deep, specialized knowledge on AI, philosophy, medical ethics, with natural, high-speed, and complex communication, both spoken and heard.
So use the three-axis approach.
Use the three-axis approach to overcome that cognitive scale limitation in your learning partners and leverage the structured 30-day program to explicitly conquer the complexity of real-world contractions and pace. Your language must now serve your intellectual ambitions without any friction.
And now, for our final provocative thought for you to chew on this week. It builds directly on this deep dive into AI, authority, and the nature of knowledge. We want you to reflect on the concept of truth in this new era of generative intelligence.
Think of it this way. Truth traditionally meant correspondence with reality. If I say the sky is blue, you can go outside and verify that correspondence.
Right. It's a verifiable fact.
But as generative AI can instantly create hyper-plausible content, a flawless explanation of a medical procedure, or a perfect philosophical argument that is entirely ungrounded in verifiable fact, the very definition of truth is fundamentally challenged.
So when plausibility replaces verifiable correspondence as the standard of truth, it shifts the entire burden of verification onto the human.
Onto you. This demands that your critical thinking, your intellectual rigor, and your ability to articulate complex uncertainty are sharper than they have ever been before. This is the next frontier of knowledge application that you are now uniquely tuned to navigate.
We look forward to seeing the results of your tuning.